Let's move on to the next part, and that's actually modeling the terrain where we will place our objects later. And this will be pretty straightforward. We'll just start with creating a plane. But first, let's just check if everything's on defaults. So yeah, we left the 3D cursor active here, so let's switch that to the median point. And we have proportional editing set to smooth and it's turned off. I always like to check these settings so I don't get surprised when I start to edit my object and I forgot to switch some of these settings. So yeah, that's why. Let's start by adding a plane. So press Shift A, mesh, then click plane. And I want to scale it up. So go into the edit mode and we'll scale it up to the 8x8. So press S, and we can then hold Ctrl to enable snapping and drag it out to 8x8 squares. Confirm with the left click. Okay, now we can subdivide this, and you know subdivision from the previous episode. You can just right click to get a contextual menu and then click subdivide. And again, you have multiple options. You can open the toolbar here and set the number of cuts, or you can subdivide till you're satisfied. So I'd like to do that this way, so I see what I'm doing. So yeah, let's click subdivide again, and then again, and then again. Altogether it was 4 times subdivision, and I think we should be able to put 16 in here and get the same result. So whatever way you prefer. Now let's extrude this up. So just press E to extrude, drag this up, maybe up until here. Okay, and now I want to lower this side to create that ridge where the water flows. So I want to go to the front view by pressing numpad 1, and let's switch to the wireframe view by holding Z and then wireframe, and we can just select these 3 vertices, press G and grab them down. So press Z to lock it on the Z axis and drag it down somewhere here to create that ridge. And since we'll be modifying the terrain with the proportional editing, I want these bottom vertices to stay unaffected. I want them to be this perfect square on the same level. So there's a perfect way how to do that. You can just hide them in the edit mode and they won't get affected by the proportional editing, but they're still there and they will stay connected to the rest of the vertices. So let's do that right now. Just drag a selection around them and press H to hide. You see now there's only rest of the wireframe visible, but when you tab out, you can see the whole object is intact. We can now switch back to the solid view mode. And remember, these view modes are located right here, but you can always switch them by holding Z. So let's switch to the solid. And let's go back to the edit mode. And right now we can shape the terrain however we want basically. And we'll need the proportional editing for that. So let's enable that with O. Press O. And we can start modifying the terrain. Maybe click some vertex around here, press G, then Z, and adjust the fall off. So you have this nice smooth fall off, and you can create these terrain bumps which look really natural, and maybe some of them here. Can go maybe a little bit lower here and here. Now I want to modify this reach here. So let's press G, then X. And if for any reason you want to have a larger fall off, but you don't want these outside to get affected, you can do the same thing that we did with the bottom ones. We can just select them, hide them here by pressing H. And now if you click any of these and let's press G and then Shift Z to lock them on the X and Y axis. So you can shape the terrain like this. Let's press X to keep it on the X axis. And these edge vertices won't get affected. G, then X, and drag it around. Now we can modify some of these on the Z-axis to create some interesting terrain. You can always select multiple vertices at once, so you can just click here and then by holding Ctrl, clicking on the other vertex, and the Blender will connect the rest automatically for you. So you can actually select them all the way, and there's a pathfinding algorithm that finds the shortest route, so you can always take advantage of that. So let's select multiple vertices here and maybe drag them down a little bit here. Okay, I think that'll be enough for the basic shape of the terrain. And now we'll make it interesting and we'll switch to the random fall off proportional editing. So click here, switch to random here, and we'll just try to detail the terrain so it has a more natural look. So let's try this vertex right here, press G, then Z, and drag it out. We can modify the fall off and make it really large, because what we want to achieve here is just to push these vertices around a little bit so the surface of the terrain is not so smooth. But we don't want to do anything crazy like this right now. It's useful when you want to model some mountains, some low poly mountains or something like that. This is a very quick way to do that. But right here I just want to make this an uneven terrain. So just left click, random vertices, press G, then Z, and with really large fall off, which you can adjust with the mouse wheel, as you can remember, you can drag them around. Now we can make this reach even more random on the X axis, so G, then X. Let's modify the fall off and drag it around a little bit, maybe even on the Z axis. Okay, and the last part I want to do is to triangulate these, because if you switch out, you can see these are all squares, but most of them are distorted. So let's triangulate them anyway. And I want to switch to the face select by pressing 3, then A to select all, and right click, and in the contextual menu you can find the triangulate faces, and the shortcut is Ctrl T. So yeah, let's click that. And now if we tab out, you can see it looks much more interesting, and all these uneven non-planar faces are triangulated. It really adds to interesting side or interesting nature of this kind of random model terrain. So maybe let's modify some parts even more just some final touches when we now see how it looks triangulated. And as you can see, the bottom side is intact. This edge here is intact. If you look from the top, we have a perfect square. So this is a great way how to do proportional editing with the vertices hidden. And if you want to unhide them, there's a very simple way. You just press Alt H and they're back in the game. Now I wanted to have a road right next to the river, so I want to do that right now, and I want really flat terrain where the road will go. To do that, we'll need to select some faces. Let's just switch here from the select box to select circle. You just click and hold the left mouse button and move here, select circle. And let's press 3 to face select. And with this tool, you just paint your selection around. If you don't like what you selected, just press Ctrl, or rather hold Ctrl, and paint over those areas. If you want to add to selection, you just hold Shift and continue painting your selection. I think this will do nicely for a road. So let's go with this. And there is a very simple way to make it flat, and it's by using the scale, which is always relative to the pivot point you are transforming around. And right now we have it set at median point, so it's basically the average median point of all these selected faces, which is what we want. So let's go with that. And if you now press S, but first let's turn off proportional editing, sorry. So yeah, let's click it off, or you could press O. Now press S to scale and Z to lock onto the Z axis. And if you go down, you can see how this flattens out. But you can go into the negative value as well, and it's really hard to find the perfect spot. So what I will do is additionally press 0, and that's telling the scale tool to scale to 0. And then if you press enter, you have a perfect flat surface. But here maybe I went too far with the selection, so I want to exclude these. Maybe add these, and then again S, then Z, 0, enter, and you have a flat surface. Let's tab out from the edit mode and name this terrain in the outline view, but don't hide it yet. We'll need it to create water here. So let's move on to the next part.